Okay, so these are all the parts for the automatic throttle cable setup. You can see you have a plate. You'll have two M10 bolts that are 20 millimeters long. You'll have a standoff, a washer, a nut, and then a lock nut and another bolt. And you'll have the actual throttle cable itself. It'll either be like this, which is a barrel, or it'll be the other style, which is a pin. For this example, we're using a barrel. The first thing we'll do is assemble the plate that goes in the transmission to the transmission. This is the passenger side of the transmission, and there's two stock bolt holes here, and typically there's nothing in there, and that's where this plate will go. So I'll set this all up. I'll show you what it looks like. So I have the plate mounted to the side of the transmission with the two M10 bolts, and then you can see I have the standoff mounted to the plate. I've got it so it's in the center of the long slot, and then you can see the hole in the standoff here is horizontal, and that's the basic setup for that. You can use red thread lock on these guys so they don't come loose, and on this bolt, if you're going to use thread lock, make sure to only use blue. So now we can route the actual throttle cable. This is the throttle body. And as I pointed out before, this is a throttle body that accepts a barrel style throttle cable. So the first thing I'll do is mount the cable into its slot here. You'll see it fits into that groove. That groove goes all the way around to the top there. You'll come through the slot here in the bracket. First thing you'll do is line up the grommet, push that in. Then we can push the plastic body in, and that's it. Okay, so for those of you out there with a pin style throttle cable, maybe you're wondering what the difference is. I'll show you this real quick. This is the pin that we're referring to. And for a pin style throttle cable, the end of it will look like this. It's this white plastic piece with rubber grommet. And all you need to do is push that rubber grommet onto the pin until the barb is all the way through. Then you'll route the cable up through the bracket. You'll push this rubber grommet through the hole until it's fully seated, and then you'll insert the black plastic body there into the rubber grommet, and that's it. Then you'll route the throttle cable down underneath what would be the firewall in this space here, and it'll come down to the transmission, and it's going to be on the inside of your starter. Your starter would be in this space here. So the cable will be somewhere along the inside of the starter there, and then it's going to get routed to that plate that we mounted to the transmission. This end of the cable, we refer to this piece here as the fork. The fork goes through the standoff, and then you'll push the plastic body into the standoff. You want to push it through till this base here is seated all the way against the actual standoff. And then, before we actually attach the fork to this metal pull here, I want to point out a few things on it. This is the lever where your stock vanagon throttle cable will be attached to, and the stock cable will be attached to this little ball here. When you step on the pedal up front, it causes this lever to move forward, which would then pull on this cable, which is connected to the throttle body. The important thing to note here is that this lever moves forward and then it stops. And if you were to step on your pedal a little more, it'll make that clicking motion. That is the transmission downshifting. And once this is all set up, the cable has to be adjusted properly so that when you're at full throttle, when the throttle body is open all the way, this lever is actually in the downshift position. So we have this slot here so that once everything is hooked up, you can make some fine adjustments by either sliding this back or forward. But typically right in the middle is where it'll want to be. So I'll go ahead and set this up with a fastener. I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so now we have the throttle cable attached to the throttle body and attached to the pull down here. we have to check to make sure that when it's at full throttle it is downshifting. And if I pull on this here, it does make the clicking motion, but the throttle body itself is not going to full open. So what I'm going to do is make an adjustment here, and I'm going to adjust it by loosening this nut, sliding the whole assembly towards the rear of the van, and then retightening it. And basically I'm going to slide it back until all of this slack is removed, and that should be spot on. Alright, so now I'm all set. I made an adjustment by sliding the whole standoff back a little bit and then checking to make sure that the throttle body itself goes to full open, which you can see the butterfly there is essentially horizontal. And then I also want to make sure that the kickdown lever itself is functioning. So that's normal, and then that's the kickdown part. And you can hear it and you can feel it. And that's it.